The moment I saw the text, I didn't see betrayal. I saw a contract violation. My husband Thomas wasn't just cheating. He was cheating with Ben, his mechanic, the one who worked on his beloved 1965 Shelby Mustang. That car wasn't just metal. It was his ego, his legacy. I walked into his massive climate-controlled garage, the palace he built for his cars, and I saw them. The Shelby, the '57 Corvette, the rare Jaguar E-Type. $1.2 million worth of steel and memories. My revenge plan didn't involve keying the paint or slashing the tires. No, that's amateur. I needed to hit him where it hurt the most, in his pride and his wallet. I decided I wouldn't ruin his cars. I would sell them. Every single one. And I'd use the mistress's own garage as the final stage of my revenge. We were the golden couple. Everyone said it. He, Michael, the charismatic sales executive, me, the quiet architect, building our life brick by brick. But about a year ago, Michael changed. He started talking about financial freedom, about digital assets, about an offshore account for our future. He called it the nest egg. I was naive. I believed him when he said he was investing in the future. He was always on his phone, always whispering about bull runs and blockchains. I thought it was a new hobby, maybe a midlife crisis thing. The first red flag wasn't a lipstick stain. It was the 2-word password I saw him type in one night. I was bringing him coffee, and I saw it flash on his laptop screen. Jade's place. I didn't know who Jade was, not yet, but I knew that wasn't a password for a respectable married man's finances. A month later, the text confirmed it. Jade was his young blonde intern. The coin was his nearly $1 million crypto fortune. Jade's place was their secret rendezvous in Miami, scheduled for the weekend after our anniversary. They were moving the nest egg to a private server, preparing to vanish. My future, his secret escape fund. I didn't confront him. That's what Thomas expected. The cheap, tearful drama that would allow him to play the victim, to tell his friends I was unstable or overreacting. No. I was done with giving him the script. I decided I would be the quiet storm he never saw coming. I was going to turn his obsession, his precious metal empire, into my ultimate weapon. My first move was to become a legal expert in car titles and marital assets overnight. I spent days poring over our prenuptial agreement, which Thomas had insisted on. He thought it protected him. He thought the cars were untouchable because they were registered solely in his name. But I found the Achilles heel. The loophole wasn't in the ownership of the cars, it was in the ownership of the garage. That massive, state-of-the-art, climate-controlled showroom he called his palace was technically held by a Shell LLC that I had established years ago as an investment vehicle. Thomas, in his arrogance, had simply signed the operating agreement, barely glancing at the fine print. The agreement clearly stated that any financial activities deemed detrimental to the LLC's primary real estate asset, including the misuse of associated funds, could trigger a management review and a temporary cessation of access by any party. The $15,000 transfer to Ben, labeled restoration deposit, was my evidence. It was a misuse of joint funds, diverted into a private account to start a competing, unauthorized business venture. Ben's dream garage, funded by my money. This violated the spirit and the letter of several clauses. It was thin, but it was enough to trigger a legal freeze. I contacted the shrewdest, most emotionally detached divorce attorney in the city, a woman known for her surgical precision rather than courtroom fireworks. I didn't ask her to argue fairness. I asked her to argue contract law and asset protection. She loved the plan. It was clean, brutal, and focused entirely on the financial fallout of his betrayal. "We need to move fast," she told me, "before he smells trouble and tries to liquidate the collection." My next task was infiltration. Thomas kept the titles and all the crucial maintenance records, the proof of the car's worth, in a locked, fireproof safe behind a painting in his home office. The safe code was a standard 6-digit combination. I knew he was predictable, but I had to be sure. I secretly swapped out the battery in his office clock with one that had a tiny, hidden microphone. I listened to hours of boring conference calls, waiting. And then, late one night, drunk after a business dinner, he stood in front of the safe and mumbled the code out loud as he typed it, 042988, the birthday of the Corvette, of course. Everything in his life revolved around those machines. I quickly scribbled it down, but getting the papers was only part of it. I needed to move the physical assets, the cars themselves, without him noticing or being able to stop me. I needed the element of surprise. I needed the perfect venue for the disposal. I called a high-end private auction house specializing in classic American muscle cars. They initially hesitated. Selling 6 priceless cars under a confidential, urgent timeline was unusual. But when I showed them photos of the collection, the unrestored 1965 Shelby, the pristine 57 Corvette, the coveted E-Type, their eyes lit up. The commission alone would be staggering. They agreed to handle the entire logistics, secure transport, quick valuation, and an exclusive, no public announcement auction. The only condition, the cars had to be moved to an off-site, secure location by the end of the week. And that's when the truly brilliant, truly malicious idea hit me. The perfect, poetic location for the auction. Ben's garage. I knew where Ben's custom shop was located. It was large, discreet, and perfectly set up with lifts and climate control. The perfect place to showcase the collection. Furthermore, by using the evidence of the $15,000 transfer, my lawyer was able to obtain a highly focused injunction against Ben's business, on the grounds that he was receiving illicit funds and aiding in the concealment of marital assets. This allowed us to serve him a temporary cease and desist and a 24-hour eviction notice under the guise of an ongoing divorce investigation involving the misuse of real estate. It was immaculate. Thomas would lose his cars, and his lover Ben would lose his livelihood and his workshop, all in one synchronized financial strike. I meticulously prepared Thomas for his usual weekly trip to Chicago, which was his cover story for meeting Ben later that weekend. I even ironed his favorite shirt and packed his toiletries. I smiled, I hugged him, and I kissed him goodbye. He looked satisfied, oblivious. He thought I was just the quiet, compliant wife. As his luxury SUV pulled out of the driveway, carrying the man who believed he was about to secure his financial future with his young lover, I walked straight to the office. I typed in the Corvette's birthday, retrieved the car titles, and placed the final, perfectly executed call to the auction house's transport team. The plan wasn't just revenge. It was a hostile financial takeover, a dismantling of his entire identity, starting with the very things he loved more than me. Chắc chắn rồi, đây là phần bột mở rộng, the day of the auction, climax, được thiết kế để tăng tối đa kịch tính, cảm xúc hả hê và chi tiết hành động, đảm bảo đạt gần 5.000 ký tự tiếng Anh như yêu cầu. The day of the auction arrived with a cold, clear snap, a perfect metaphor for the end of my marriage. I woke up at 5 a.m. feeling neither dread nor elation, but a sharp, focused sense of purpose. This wasn't about closure, it was about execution. Thomas was scheduled to be on a flight back from his phantom business meeting in Chicago, blissfully unaware that his entire universe was being systematically liquidated back home. My first task was the transport. The auction house crew, a team of highly professional logistics experts, arrived precisely at 6:30 a.m. They were silent, efficient, and discreet. The sight of those massive flatbed trucks backing up to Thomas's immaculate, beloved garage felt like watching a bomb squad dismantle a threat. I used the special code I'd retrieved, the Corvette's birthday, 042988, to open the massive steel door. The 6 cars stood gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The legendary 1965 Shelby Mustang GT350, the smooth ivory 57 Corvette, the deep red Jaguar E-Type Thomas claimed was irreplaceable. Seeing them all lined up, waiting to be taken away, felt like retrieving 6 hostages he had valued more than me. I supervised every winch, every strap, every careful maneuver. The air was thick with the smell of high-octane gasoline and old leather. As the Shelby, his true first love, was loaded, I felt a fleeting, bitter wave of sadness, but I quickly suppressed it. He chose this. He prioritized steel and a cheap affair over the life we built. The destination? Ben's custom shop. I drove separately, arriving just as the first flatbed was pulling in. Ben's shop was usually bustling, but today it was silent and locked. My legal team had moved quickly. The eviction notice, based on the injunction, had been served less than 12 hours prior. The place was clean, empty, and ready to be repurposed. It was the perfect hidden showroom. The poetic justice was so sharp it almost tasted metallic. By 10 a.m., the cars were perfectly positioned inside Ben's vast, now sterile garage. The auction house staff, wearing black suits and earpieces, transformed the space into a high-end exhibition hall. They even hung up velvet ropes and placed spotlights on the cars. It was ironically beautiful. The private auction was scheduled for 1 p.m. The atmosphere was electric. Only serious collectors were invited, no tire kickers, no press. They knew they were bidding on a once-in-a-lifetime collection, being sold under mysterious, urgent circumstances. This aura of exclusivity only drove the bids higher. I stood on a hidden mezzanine, watching the spectacle unfold. I wasn't just observing, I was orchestrating the demolition of Thomas's pride. The bidding on the Jaguar E-Type started at $250,000 and finished at a staggering $385,000. Next, the '57 Corvette, the car he said he loved almost as much as me, went for $410,000 to an anonymous phone bidder. But the real drama, the true climax, was the 1965 Shelby Mustang GT350. This car was the core of his identity. He had a tattoo of its silhouette on his arm. The auctioneer described its perfect engine, its rarity, its provenance. The bidding was ferocious, pushing past the $500,000 mark. When the final hammer dropped, the price was $620,000. The entire collection, the Betrayal Fund, the ego boosters, the marital replacements, was gone. The total tally was an astounding $1.65 million. While the final paperwork was being signed, I received an alert. Thomas's flight had landed. The game was entering its final, most satisfying phase. I typed out the text message I had prepared meticulously. It wasn't long, it wasn't emotional, it was purely factual, but devastating in its context. I attached a high-resolution photo of the empty space in Ben's garage where the Shelby had just been sitting, with a collector's sold tag taped to the floor. The text simply read, "The final restoration is complete. All assets liquidated at Ben's shop. Check your bank account for the wire transfer details of the proceeds. Divorce papers served to your office 5 minutes ago. P.S. Enjoy the flight home." I pressed send. I instructed the auction team to leave the massive, empty garage bay door at my house slightly ajar. I wanted him to see the emptiness immediately. I drove back home, the silence in my own car deafening, yet peaceful. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of expensive champagne, bought with the proceeds of the auction itself, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. He arrived home in a fury, the car tires squealing as he slammed the brakes. I heard the front door slam, followed by his signature enraged roar. He didn't come to the kitchen. He ran straight to the garage. The moment he saw the vast, empty expanse, the silence that followed was more potent than any sound. It was the sound of a man realizing his identity, his pride, and his future had been systematically, legally erased. The only thing left was the pale yellow square of masking tape where I had affixed my final personal note before the crew left. His frantic call came right on schedule. I took a deep, steadying breath, letting the victorious, bubbling champagne tingle on my tongue before I calmly answered the phone. The true climax wasn't the auction. It was this final verbal takedown. Thomas arrived home late that night. He was frantic. He ran straight to the garage door, punched in the code, and flipped the light switch. Empty. The polished concrete floor gleamed under the sterile light. All that was left was a note I taped to the wall. "Thanks for the restoration fund, honey. I'm trading steel for peace." He found me in the living room, calmly sipping wine. His face was pure disbelieving rage. You sold them. You destroyed me. You can't do this. Oh, I can, Thomas, I corrected him, gesturing to the stack of legal papers. And I did. That money, every penny, is now mine. It's not joint. It's not marital. It's reimbursement for years of emotional neglect, financial deception, and the total value of the life you planned to scrap for a quick thrill with your mechanic. He tried to argue the money was his inheritance. I pointed to the restoration deposit receipt. You misused marital funds. You forfeited the privilege. And tell Ben I said thank you for the perfect auction venue. He was surprisingly helpful, even in his absence. Thomas ended up with his mistress, a massive debt, and a lifetime of looking at empty asphalt. I ended up with $1.4 million, a clean divorce, and the undeniable satisfaction of knowing I dismantled his entire identity. Never underestimate the wife who knows the value of your assets, because the price of betrayal, sometimes, is measured in horsepower and polished chrome.